There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the 6th of November. It's a Wednesday here in Nashville, Tennessee, right around high noon, and we are so glad and honored to be here with you today. We never take it lightly whenever you carve out time, whether that's over a lunch break or you got a lot of life going on, especially this time and season. There's so many other things you could be choosing to do today, and we don't take that lightly. So, in all of our preparation and praying and getting ready for our time together, we are so excited to have you here with us today. Especially, we're going to be taking your questions live during the second half today. So we usually like to spend about an hour in total. So for those who are wondering, hey, how long, are we going to be meeting up today? It's going to be 1 hour. For those of you already asking, is there going to be a replay? There is. However, this is very highly interactive. So the second half today, we're going to take your questions live, and I'm going to do some brief introductions here around the horn with the guys, and then we're going to jump into the presentation itself. But my good dear friend Johnny Makowitz is helping us keep on track with our timing, and also a DJ outside of here as he's continuing to work and provide for his family. So doing it all. So Johnny Mack, you're helping us in the chat today. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you'll be serving.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks, Josh. You're the man. Not only keeping the beat outside of here, but keeping everyone on the beat here in the chat box today. So we'll go ahead and make sure we make some beautiful music with today's program. Why don't we? And the way we do that is basically get engaged, guys. Seriously, don't just be someone who's consuming this webinar, but get active. Be in the chat box, giving us your questions, what you're expecting to learn, interacting with us so that we can customize all your questions and your thoughts, your concerns to whatever you have in mind, right? We want this to be for you today. This is a pure give on our part to help you figure out if our program and mission is something that you can see yourself plugging into in the short term or long term. 30-second pitch on who I am, why I'm here. I'm just going to tell you right out the gate, I'm on baby step 2. Cat's out of the bag. Look at that. I work here at Dave Ramsey. So to be transparent and full disclosure, I'm still working through the process. As Josh said, I'm making some side income, not only DJing, but coaching and just trying to help my family, my wife and 3 kids, try to make a better life for themselves. And so this is my passion. And so I am a billboard of what I'm doing for my clients. And, so for many of you that want to say, I'm only baby step 2, I can't do this today. Lies, 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 lies. False. So, with that said, this is an incredible opportunity, guys, to change some lives and family trees. And all it may take is you having a conversation or two with somebody, giving them a chance to change their life. And so, speaking of somebody else who's also changed not only many lives, but his own life for him and his family, my main man, Dave McGuire. Who are you, brother? What are you doing here at Ramsey, and how do you fit in this whole thing?
Thanks, Johnny. Appreciate it, man. And thanks to you guys tuning in today. Yeah, my name is David, but recently I lost my ID, so now I just go by Dave. So glad to be here. Glad that you're here. And listen, we're changing lives, like Johnny said. We love helping to step into people's messes, help them solve their problems, guiding them to the Ramsey path, because we know it works. It worked for me. I don't know about you, but I was completely broke, drowning in debt just a few years ago when I found this crazy guy named Dave Ramsey on YouTube. And my wife and I were struggling, and we knew we needed some help. And so basically, in a nutshell, we were so broke, we couldn't afford an opinion. I wasn't even living paycheck to paycheck. I was living paycheck to Tuesday. Can I get a witness from somebody? That's how broke you were. Well, I found Ramsey on YouTube, and I just dove headfirst into all our content here and wound up landing on this program. I was right where you were just a few years ago, thinking about becoming a coach. And like Johnny said, I was on baby step 2. And I'm like, who's going to listen to me? Well, come to find out, a lot of people did, and they still are. And so I'm just passionate. I'm not perfect. I have some struggles as well, working through my stuff. But I know that this program changed my life, helped save my marriage, and I've been honored to coach this program and use the skill set that I've learned on how to practically coach people through the techniques and strategies that we teach. And I've been honored to help change people's lives. And here I am, just a few years later, working for Ramsey himself. Just never thought that would work, but God saw fit that to use this role to fulfill my purpose, which is simply to change people's lives using his word. So glad to be here. I will be in the Q&A, so go ahead and start typing. I've answered a few questions. Go ahead, bring your questions. We're here to serve you. And thank you so much again for joining us today. Cannot wait to walk with you on this journey. We'll see you guys.
Thank you, Dave and Johnny, and you all. I want to highlight something here real quick. So this is really just the beginning. If you have questions about the training, our hope today is that you can walk away knowing, yes, this is something I need to go ahead and enroll and take part of. And near the top of the hour, because you're investing an hour with us today or watching that replay, we are going to have a webinar exclusive, a special price that we'll set aside for you. So stick around because we'll make sure that you're made aware of that. But Johnny, Dave, Kelvin, and Brad here on Ramsey's coaching team alongside me, we're going to be following up with you after this webinar comes to a close. We're going to be calling, we're going to be emailing to make sure your questions are answered. And even today, while you're with us live, a few of you we're going to take live later in the call today. But as you're typing in your questions to Johnny there in the chat or in the Q&A to Dave, just know that those questions are coming to us directly. With the sheer quantity of folks who have showed up live today, we have to try to keep it as focused as we can in the chat. So that's why you're not seeing all the responses coming in. And I can only glance because I start to get motion sickness because they're coming in so fast. So thank you for that. But I am now pleased to introduce you to my esteemed guest today here, who's only not going to be with us today on this webinar, but also is in the training himself and also leads our group development calls for coaches and training. So senior coach Tim Mann, who's often on call with Dave and Dr. Deloney when you hear him on the show and they say, listen, we're going to get you connected to one of our internal coaches. Tim is that man. So Tim, tell us a little bit about yourself, and so glad that you're here with us today.
Yeah, like my friends Johnny and Dave, I started off this journey in baby step 2. For those of you that are not familiar, that's paying off all of your non-mortgage debt, part of our 7 baby steps that we teach here at Ramsey Solutions. Thankfully, by the grace of God and some hard work, my wife and I are no longer in that step. We are significantly further along, but we started right there in that same spot. Came to Nashville more than a decade ago to take this training live in person back before we moved it to the magic that is the internet, where you can now do this from the enjoyment of your own home. But came to Nashville, learned how to do this, and took this back to build this into originally my counseling practice. I don't come at this from the financial background. I'm not a numbers guy. I'm not a math nerd. I took as few math classes as they would let me get away with to get the degrees that I wanted. And that was it. So if you're here because like I love like math and spreadsheets and numbers, yes, that's awesome. And I love that you're here. And some of you are here and you're like, I hate all of those things that you just listed. Great. This is for you too.
Yeah.
But I've now had the privilege and honor to sit with people from the very, very wealthy to the very much opposite of that, and everywhere in between to help people figure out how do I make movement in my world to go from where I am right now towards where I want to be. And I'm excited to get to walk with you today on what does it look like to be that for someone? What does it look like to be a coach in someone's world and help see those same life changes from the best front row seat in the house?
Tim, and let's go ahead and just dive in. I love what you're talking about here about being a financial coach, because that is the point of today's webinar, is to understand what is a financial coach, what does that mean, what do they do. You did mention the baby steps, which got me thinking. I'm so glad to be back. I was out last week. We welcomed another little baby into our family. So my son, Mr. Judah Rock, is now in the world. So glad to be here. But as you were talking about baby steps and this progression, I mean, little guy can't even crawl yet. So sometimes you have to meet people where they are. And what I would like to do is let's remove any jargon. Let's remove anything from the top shelf here that's out of reach. We want to present this in a way where you guys, if you have questions, just put it in the chat. Just put it in the Q&A. We are here for you today. We are not here to puff ourselves up or to make us look smart. We are here to serve you, make sure your questions are answered, so you can decide if the Financial Coach Master Training is the next best thing for you. So let's do this, Tim. Let's start with just simple definitions here. When
Yeah.
we're talking about a financial coach, oftentimes it's compared to or thought of in the same realm as like a financial advisor. So maybe let's start there, talking about the difference between a financial
Yeah.
advisor and a financial coach.
Well, and the reason for that, y'all, is we want you to understand what coaching is, because we'll just call this out too, right? As we're trying to get to a clear definition together today, coaching may not be what you think. So let's make sure we're all operating from the same definition here. And so you mentioned this idea of the financial coach as kind of compared to a financial advisor. I don't want to say opposed to, because it's weird, because I have friends who are financial advisors and they're great referral sources back and forth. And the reason for that is a financial advisor, or a certified financial planner, CFP for short, is going to focus on your money's behavior, where a financial coach is going to focus on your habits, patterns, and behaviors with your money. All right, so I'll say that again because I know some of you are taking notes
Please.
today. A
Yes.
financial advisor is going to focus on your money's behavior. A financial coach is going to focus on your habits, patterns, and behaviors with money. So the advisor is going to look at what's invested and where is it and what's your timeline horizon and what kind of returns are you getting and are you on track with the money you have invested in the place where it's invested to hit the financial goals you have at the time frame you set for yourself. And that's amazing, right? Financial advisors are wonderful. I have several great financial advisors in my life. I pay someone well, I might add, to do that work for me because that's not something I'm set up to do as a coach. My job as a coach is to walk with people through their habits and their patterns and their behaviors, and a lot of times their identity and even the thoughts and emotions that are connected to money. Because I saw the question coming earlier, what in the world can
Yep.
a coach teach somebody that a Financial Peace University class or a Total Money Makeover book or a free radio show or podcast couldn't? And y'all, my quick response to that is coaching is not about education, it's about application. There's a ton of very, very easily accessed information available. So someone who wants to figure out what to do and how to do it can find that for a lot less hassle and expense than investing in a coach for themselves. But the problem becomes in how do they apply it? How do they overcome the internal objections, the external objections? How do they get past the people in their lives who are like, that's stupid. You're always going to have a credit card. You're always going to have a car payment. You're always going to have a student loan. How do we overcome those challenges so that they can actually put into practice the things that they know they could and probably even should do? And so this is the role of a coach, is to sit and walk through the emotions and the challenges and the perspectives around money. Another thing that we sometimes think about is we're trying to picture a coach in our mind. A lot of us, especially because it's football season again, we picture someone on the side of a football field grabbing a 400 pound guy by the face mask, pulling him in, screaming at him and telling him to get back out there and make the tackle or make the run or do the kick. I don't know football, but that's what our
Sports.
images are. Go sports ball, get a better score than the other team, right? Like that. That's how we tend to view a coach. And y'all, I will tell you the earliest language usage that we could find in the English language of the word coach had nothing to do with sports. In fact, when we started researching the word coach, the earliest language usage we found was the idea of a stagecoach. It was a wheeled vehicle pulled by horses that existed solely for the purpose of moving people from one spot to another, from where they are right now towards where they want to be. And so when we talk about coaching here on this webinar and on into Financial Coach Master Training beyond and beyond, our definition of a coach is far more aligned with that than someone who screams at athletes on a field. Our definition is it's someone who helps someone move from where they are toward where they want to be. And sometimes, y'all, there's rain and there's snow on the path. Sometimes there's potholes to be avoided. The road of a coach isn't always easy, but it always leads to somewhere much better than where we started. There's an adventure, there's an excitement to stepping into coaching and to helping move people from where they are right now towards where they want to be. And let's think about who that is. But go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, and what I'd like to do, so one thing we're getting ready to dive into the actual elements of the financial coach master training, what's included, the three different pieces that are included. But one thing I want to highlight, Tim, and I know where you're going next, so I just wanted to step in for a moment. I want to let you know, we actually updated the training, or refreshed the training, I should say, in February of this year, because we have our senior coaches like Les, like Tim, Lisa, Chris, and Justin, who are active practitioners. So if you could share next, Tim, some of those stats, what we're seeing as you guys are actively not only coaching coaches, but out there actually coaching clients. What are you seeing? I know you like to talk about 10, 80, 10. Could you break that down for us?
Right. This is about as mathematic as I'm going to get today. This will share some of the other averages and stats later
Sure.
on today's webinar. But one of the things that I've seen, and by the way, this has held true for the decade plus that I've been a coach. It's held true for all the experience. By the way, you mentioned our senior coaching squad here. We represent about 80 years of practical experience doing actual coaching. So for those of you like, what separates this from other training? 80 years of experience with real practitioners who you have access to throughout the entirety of your time in financial coach master training. That's one of the big ones. But one of the things we've learned is at any given point in our history, there's about 10% of the population who is doing really, really well financially. They've got a good handle on things. They've got a good feel for their money. They've got everything rocking and rolling. They are doing a fantastic job. And usually, the largest problem for this percentage of the population is how do I pass this on to the next generation? How do I share this without it ruining my kids? How do I make sure that the work that I've done to plug in my family well for their future actually lasts for more than a generation? And then you got 10% on the very opposite end. And these are the people who are clinging on to the driftwood for dear life, right? This is Jack holding on to the board, hoping that Rose doesn't push the hands off, and there was room for both of them on the door, and I will hold to that till the day I die. But there you go. But they're hanging on for dear life. The water is cold. The storms are coming. Everything has fallen apart for them. The divorce is going through the court system. The eviction is happening. Whatever that crisis may be, there's at any given point 10% of our population that is legitimately in a point of crisis. And stepping in just to help those people keep their head above water can be a wonderful opportunity. And then there's,
And Tim, I'm gonna
yeah.
tell you something. What I found too. So as we were preparing, getting ready, I would fall into the trap where it's easy, in my experience, to think that those 10% that are just barely hanging on is everybody. Like, I just wanted to say that out loud because I know that's one trap. And today, again,
Mm.
we're trying to let you guys get a sneak behind the scenes of how we process. But that's one thing I just want to say, that I fell into the trap thinking, oh, but everybody's in this 10%, but that's not the case.
Well, and let me even address one other thing about the 10%, which is kind of a myth in society, that the people in that 10%, that their financial portion is the main part of the crisis. Even the 10% in crisis may have financial means. It doesn't mean that it's a financial crisis, right? So even that 10%, some of us are thinking, okay, that's the
Good
10% I
point.
want to work with. Even then, that doesn't mean that they don't have the ability to invest in themselves to get out of it. Some of them don't, right? There's people, for example, in North Carolina right now who lost their home, their car, their job, everything to a hurricane that no insurance company is going to cover, and they are in a mess, y'all. Like this is a pit of despair that they are sitting in. That is a legitimate piece. And there's also people in that 10%. Money is not the main issue. The other issues are the main issue, but they're in a crisis and they need help, even figuring out how can I use what I do have to give me the space to process my crisis. But then let's talk about the 80% in the middle. There's 80% of our population at any given point that they're okay right now, right? As long as the paycheck keeps coming, they'll be okay. As long as they don't hit a nail with their tire, they're okay. As long as there's not an emergency room visit for one of the kids falling out of a tree, they're going to be okay. And Josh, I see you breathing like that, but that's because you just had your ninth child, and so you've had a lot of those in your life, right? It's
Yeah.
but it's okay until the water heater goes out in the middle of the night. It's okay until the dishwasher starts spewing things out of the sink. It's okay until they come out to go to the job and the tire is flat. And when they get to the job, they're fired because they were late one too many times. And now they're on this position of crisis. It's people who they're okay, but they're terrified looking at who's going to win this thing, right? A lot of us went to bed last night. I don't know about y'all. I stayed up too late, but then still went to bed before it was all called. And here's the thing, part of the foolishness of waiting, y'all, I know in my heart of hearts, I know this deep down, and I truly believe this. What goes on in your house is 1,000 times more important than who's in the White House, right? And we can have our opinions on that. We're not going to fire that up. And that's part of the reason we have the chat box set up the way it is. So we don't let it go that direction. And we're not going to park there today. We're truly not. And it would also be foolish to not mention it because we know that that's been at the forefront of most people's minds for the better part of the last year. And so you have 80% of the population that is constantly living on the edge, constantly in fear of what's coming, constantly not sure how am I going to get to the next thing. And they need someone to walk with them and figure out what is my next right step? What is the thing that I can do so that the storm doesn't take me out? What is it that I can do to give myself a little bit of margin and a little bit of breathing room in my life? And by the way, for all of us that step into this world of coaching, that 80% in the middle, and the 10% on the end who's doing really well, they create the margin in our world so that I can give coaching away to the 10% who's in crisis and can't afford it. Now, I've done a lot of crisis coaching. I've sat with people in the midst of loss. I've sat with widows. I've sat with people whose families have fallen apart. I've sat with people who've lost people important to them or who are in the ashes of a career or a business that they're standing in that was supposed to provide for their family. And I've been able to do that by creating margin with this 90% to give myself the space with this 10%. And I get to hit my goals of what I need to create for my family while also serving my community well.
Tim, I'd like to go ahead now and move into actually what's included in the training. But before we do that, I just want to circle back around to something we talked about at the start here. And I know Dave and Johnny had mentioned earlier their why they're doing this. So when you're looking at stepping into doing the financial coach master training, you have two different perspectives you talk about. One is you're entering, you're doing the training because you personally went something, or how does it work? Or someone else's experience. Walk us through the purpose of why someone would consider the training today.
Say your question a different way. I want to make sure I understood your question.
Sure. So someone may choose to step into the training because they themselves have walked
Gotcha.
through. They're like, listen, I have been in that 80% that you're speaking of. Or maybe they're like, listen, I've been walking the baby steps long before I could even walk. Like I've done this, and they may experience that. So just talk about just the purpose and the perspective that someone may bring as they're considering the training
Yeah.
today.
So again, some of you, you're here and you are on the earlier stages of the journey and you are fired up, wired up, ready to go, ready to make a difference, and you're looking to move the needle on your own life. And that's awesome. And some of you are here because, like Josh just mentioned, you've been through these things. You had the benefit of looking backwards and saying, I remember what it took to get here. Let me share that with the next generation. And so one of the things we've learned is there's really three different approaches for the people that come through Financial Coach Master Training as to what they want to do with it. There is a percentage of the population that says, I want to do this in a purely ministry or a pro bono or a community service kind of setting. I have no desire to charge for coaching. I want to bring this skill set and I want to provide this for my community. This is how I want my community to look different. There's another part of the population that's going to take this, and you're saying, you know what? I don't really have a desire to even create a practice, whether for profit or not for profit, but I want to figure out how to have these conversations with my team members where I lead at work. I want to have this conversation and lead differently in my community. I want to have the ability to connect with people in a different way and help people move forward. Even if we take the personal financial portion out of it, I just want to figure out how do I lead better and have a greater influence. And so they take this training for personal development reasons. And the third group, admittedly the largest group by all the data that we have, says, I want to do this. I want to bring the passion I have for this area of making transformation happen in personal finance, and I want to turn this into a profitable opportunity to move my own situation forward, or to feed my family, or to fund my retirement, or for some of you, even to leave a job behind and take on something different and step into a new career and embrace a new path forward for your future. And what does that look like? And so we've seen people do this all across the board. We've seen people be successful all across the board. I'm not going to name them off because I don't have the permission to do so on this webinar, but I have friends that are coaches that have never taken a dime for coaching because they were independently wealthy when they started, and they've just given and given and given away. And I've sat with people who were bankers and border patrol supervisors and military people who take this training because they want to be a better leader and a better supervisor and have better results come from the people they lead. And I've seen them be successful. And I sit with people on a regular basis who are making a six-figure take-home income in their coaching practice by serving their communities this way. I meet with people all the time who this is how they feed their kids. This is how they're paying for college. This is how they're paying their mortgage or paying their mortgage off or funding their retirement and everywhere in between. So as we're going to walk through this training here, that's what's available. And that's why people tend to step into this.
Yeah, and as Tim had mentioned, combined experience with the coaches alone, the senior coaches, over 80 years of experience. But you all, as far as just even the practical setting up where you're sitting down with clients, guys, we've been doing this now for over 25 years. And the way we've set up the training is where you're going to be learning content that's self-paced. You're going to then be applying. This is very application heavy. We are all about not just learning to puff up, but actually doing, reflecting, and then having those group discussion calls with the senior coach as well. And then you're seeing the growth here as well, which we'll get to in a moment. But this is where Tim and the other senior coaches, they're coming around you in a group setting where you and peers in training are reviewing. So there you go. That's a quick overview, but let's dive just a little deeper into each one. So the first one being the content, the self-paced program. I'm going to go ahead and read these bullet points because some of you have made mention that you're just hearing the audio, and that's fine. So this is self-paced program, 42 multimedia lessons, over 7 chapters that include knowledge checks, challenges, and journaling. And on average, we are going to talk about some averages. It's just, I think it was Luis had asked earlier, hey, how long does this take to go through the training? On average, it takes right around 8 to 9 weeks to go through the training if you invest an hour a day. But from the date, not the date of purchase, but the date of activation, we're going to encourage you to do that in the next 90 days once you've gone ahead and enrolled. But the date of activation, you have 1 full year to complete and go through the training. But Tim, maybe talk a little bit more. I know you were part of the ones who put together this training, some of the topics that are covered as they're going through.
Yeah, so we're going to spend time, for example, on the coaching identity. I will tell you one of the most influential resources in how we structured this entire training was the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. Many of you have probably read that because it was a #1 bestseller for a long time, still may be. But we start with the identity of who we are, right? There you go, Josh. Who we are. And because this is who we are, this is what we do. And because this is what we do, these are the results we see. And we talk about how to establish a purpose, a mission, and a vision for yourself and for your practice. We talk about how to connect with people right where they are based on their personality styles and their communication preferences. We spend time on how to actually perform a consultation, which is where we offer someone the opportunity to become our coaching client. We talk about how to build and structure your practice so that you can actually go do these. And we talk about how do you stay motivated throughout the entire process? Because y'all, I'll just call this out. It can be very, very difficult to walk with real people through hard stuff, right? If you don't believe that's the case, I don't know where you are in our society right now, but y'all, you are surrounded by real people who are going through difficult stuff. And if you've been in relationship with them, you've seen how difficult that can be. And so we're going to talk through how do we do that? How do we do that effectively? How do we meet with people right where they are? So again, we can help them to where they need to be. And yes, there's knowledge checks. That's a really nice way of saying quizzes. We call them knowledge checks because you can take them as many times as you need to. We have challenges because to know and to not do is to not really know. And so we're actually going to encourage you to put things into practice, into action as you walk through each of these 7 chapters. And the journaling is huge. I saw someone in the chat box saying, don't skip the journaling. Susan, totally agree. Right? One of the best ways to handle something, to process something, and to internalize something and make it really a part of you is to put it on paper, is to write it down. You can go back and revisit it later and think about where was I? What was I thinking? I mentioned earlier, I'm not a math nerd. I've done like 3 spreadsheets in my life that I was not required to for work or a class. One of those was my wife and I's debt snowball. That's baby step 2, the debt snowball. So I can refer back to that. And I tend to go back about once a year and look at that and just remind myself of the mass of debt that we paid off and a reminder of this is where we were and this is what it felt like. And here's what we're going to do to make sure we never, ever, ever, ever go back into that. And so that journal is so important for those purposes.
Well, Tim, you had mentioned, having all the details, running to the numbers may not be your cup of tea, but we've built it into the training for those who are absolutely like, listen, I just need some talking points. I need can you help me with just different calculators that you can use? Coaching forms. We have a coaching session library. We built that into the tools and resources. That's the next slide I have up here. I'm going to let you know, yes, you have the self-paced online content, but guys, from day one, when you're in the training, you're going to be able to download a coaching library so that some of this may scare some of you all, but hey, we like to deliver it bold and real here. There's no reason you couldn't begin coaching clients once you have access to this and start using the coaching library from day one in the training. We try to make it super simple and approachable. Tim, I know you all put so much time and effort here to make this easy for people to have. What else would you want to highlight as far as the tools and resources we've provided here?
So again, I've made it very clear that my nerdiness lies in my love for like sci-fi and superhero stuff, not like spreadsheets and numbers. And if you were like me, one of the best ways for you to learn how to do something is what Ken Coleman refers to as the proximity principle. This is if I want to learn how to do something, I need to go to places where it's being done by people who are doing it well. And so this coaching session library is an opportunity for you to watch actual, real coaching sessions. These are not scripted. There's not dramatizations. They're not even edited. The edit is we turn the camera on, we turn the camera off. That's it. That's the editing that happened for these things. And you can actually walk through and see how do you ask these questions? How do you structure a coaching session? How do you pace things? How do you handle it when your client throws something crazy out on the table in front of you? You get to hear a couple sessions in there with my good friend Lisa Barber, another one of our senior coaches. And this couple she's working with, like they made Jerry Springer look like a tame show. It's crazy. But getting to actually hear what do you do with real people in real situations, and we talk through those, and so you can go in and watch those. And again, if you're like me and you learn by watching people who know how to do things do it, that's available to you in there as well.
Very good. And then the last section, which is highly rated. from our coaches going through the training is the coaching calls. And this is where you all will have time, 7 different development calls. Each one pairs with the end of each chapter. There's 7 different chapters as you're going through the training, but you're going to be with other peers. We try to keep those smaller group setting where you have more personalized time with our senior coaches. And just like you're going to experience here in just a moment, we're going to take some of your calls live with Tim today. So Johnny, if you could go ahead and start to warm things up for folks as they're getting ready here to ask their questions live with us. And don't worry, it's just going to be your audio. I know some say, listen, I'm not ready to go on camera. No, it's just going to be audio today. You're going to be good. But this is
Listen, y'all, if we can put this face on camera, you're okay.
but this is where you are going to be talking with a senior coach and you're going to be reflecting on, hey, so here's what I tried doing. I tried approaching, a community leader this week, wanting to know if I could possibly start to work with clients in my area. And here's what I experienced. We want it to be very practical and tactical. And this is also paired with bi-monthly live coaching calls where the 5 senior coaches, they're coming together roundtable style to discuss what's unique to this month, this week, and what they're experiencing. So it's very practical. But Tim, I know you're heavily involved in this area. What else would you want to add or what stands out to you?
Yeah, so this is the only part of the training that's not self-paced. And the reason for that is because you're getting together with other people in real time through the magic of Zoom and participating and learning and growing. One of the most important things I've learned in my coaching career is from the old African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. This is where you begin to build community. This is where you're getting actual live real-time feedback and response and the opportunity to bring some of your questions in and think about, how do I overcome this particular challenge, or how do I get past this thing that's stopping me from going where I want to go as a coach? And as though that's not enough, I mentioned earlier we have that panel, of which I'm a part of, with 80 years of combined coaching experience. That panel gets together twice a month, and we pick a topic that we're hearing from a lot of coaches saying, this is a challenge, or I need help in this area. And we talk about it in a panel discussion for a full hour. Those twice a month live panel discussions are recorded and available on demand. So if you cannot make it live, you're able to go back and watch those later. So we have more than 50 hours of additional bonus content that you can go back and watch. And that's panels of coaches who are actually practitioners talking about what are the things we're hearing, what are the biggest difficulties preventing us from getting where we want to be in our coaching practices and having the impact and the transformation that we're trying to generate as coaches in the marketplace.
Excellent. And once you have gone, Tim, I know there's a couple questions here. We'll do a quick lightning round and then we'll go live. Some are asking about the ROI for the course. How many sessions does one meet with a client and so forth. So we'll get to that in just a moment, but want to close out this portion here by saying, once you have gone through and completed the Financial Coach Master Training, you will then have the designation as a Ramsey Solutions Master Financial Coach. Renewal is not required. So Tim, I know this is something you're very accustomed to in the world of counseling and coaching. Maybe speak just a brief highlight there on what it means by renewal not required. And then could we take just a moment? I want to speak to some of the averages. We had a lot of questions coming here from Regina, Crystal, Jessica. We're asking just about a number of sessions and average price a coach. But go ahead, speak to the renewal, and then we'll dive into those lightning round questions.
Gotcha. So when we say renewal not required, so for many professional licenses, counselors, psychiatrists, CPAs, attorneys, doctors, a lot of these different professions have a certain amount of hours that you have to sit in classes every single year, or they don't let you practice anymore. And especially, if I'm going to a surgeon, I would very much appreciate my surgeon being aware of what's going on and making sure that they're up to date on those skills. And so there's a reason for it. And coaching, you learn best by doing. Like that's just the reality. And so we have the opportunity for you to say, you know what, we are not going to require this. Once you've earned this designation, it's yours for life, right? You get to be a Ramsey Solutions Master Financial Coach for as long as you live. And some of you are like, okay, but I want more education. I want more support. I want more resources. I want more development. We do have that available. We're not going to go much into it today because we want to stay focused on this, but we do have a follow-up graduate program that is optional, known as Preferred Coach, which provides ongoing resources, development, support, community along the way, as well as leads, because that's a question we get all the time. Is there an opportunity to get leads through Ramsey? Yes. In being a Ramsey Preferred Coach. But the only way to become a Ramsey Preferred Coach is to first graduate Financial Coach Master Training and earn that designation as a Ramsey Solutions Master Financial Coach. Again, there's no requirement for renewal. That is yours forever. So if you're like, hey, I want to do this in my church, I want to run a benevolence ministry, and that's the extent of what I want to do with it, awesome, go. Like, wholly support that. And if you're like, hey, I want to build a business, I want to build something over the next 10, 20 years, I want to fund my retirement and leave my other job and let my spouse stay home with the kids, whatever that is, cool. Join us in Ramsey Preferred Coach and learn how to take that business side of your coaching to the next level as well.
All right, Tim, let's talk about a few averages here, and then I'm going to kick it over to Johnny in just a moment here with our first guest. So again, we want to make this very approachable, simple today. So if someone's looking to do the coach, what could they expect as far as number of sessions and what they would charge for a rate? How would you answer that, Tim?
Yeah, so let's talk about a couple of the averages. And again, I'll just quick disclaimer, I don't like averages because I don't want to be average. And here's a couple of the averages that we see because this is helpful information to have. Right now, the average coaching session lasts for about an hour. Now, some coaches use the clock hour, which is 60 minutes. Some use the college or counseling hour, which is 50 minutes. Which one should you do? Doesn't matter. You choose, right? You are in control. This is your practice. That's an important part to understand. Also, the average client is working with their coach for 6 to 12 sessions over 6 to 12 months. I mean, you're going to have some that stick around less than that. You're going to have some that stay longer than that. I personally have clients where our time together has been measured in years, not months. Our number of sessions is in the dozens. Or I've got several clients who've had more than 50 sessions together. Why? Because situations change and life changes and different things come about and they need to adjust to what life throws at them and they want their coach in the corner as they're doing that. So those opportunities exist there. And then of course, what is the average fee per session? Also notice fee per session, not fee per hour. When someone hires a coach, they're not just investing in that hour, they're investing in everything that you've put in to be the coach that they need for that time. So right now, the per session fee that we're seeing our coaches average is around $250 to $350 per session. And so that gives you some idea as to, okay, what can I do here? What does this look like? If I want to make this amount, then I need to do this many sessions, and you can start to work through the math side of that as well. Which, by the way, we do have a calculator for that inside of the Preferred Coach program. You can put all that information in, and it'll show you what you can generate. So if you're like, oh, I love more calculators, they're there. They're there.
All right. Well, excellent, Tim. Well, Johnny has held off the callers as long as we can because we want to make sure we get to as many questions as we can. And we'll take maybe a call or two, Johnny, and then we will also drop the special. I know some folks are asking if we could go ahead and make mention. So, Johnny, who is our first guest today?
It's time to release the hounds. My goodness. It is just like, whew, I'm going to need like hand therapy after this. But you guys are doing awesome. Keep the chat coming. And if you want to go live with Tim, let us know. I don't know what Tim's laughing at, but it's probably.
I don't know why that particular thought just like, it's a serious lack of sleep over the last couple nights, Johnny.
Was it hand therapy? Is that?
Yes.
Maybe we could work that into the coaching program here at some point in the future. But all right.
I just picture your hands talking to a therapist. Let's talk about my mother.
Well,
right? Okay. Well, we're off the rails here, y'all.
Yeah.
Who are we talking to, Johnny?
We clearly have lost it. So let's get Scott Long on here before we go too long with what we're talking about. So Scott, I believe you had a question for us. I'm going to read it, but these are his words, not mine, just so everyone knows. Since I'm an old man, in quotation marks, what would be the best way to relate to the younger generations on finances? So made me chuckle a little bit. Nobody is too old to make an impact. And plus, we don't know how old you truly are, Scott. But tell us about, I believe the heart of your question is, how do I relate to different types of people if I'm in a different phase than where they are, and how do I coach them? Is that right, Scott?
That is.
So tell us a little more about that. And you're going live with Tim now. Go for it.
So I've taken the class through the baby steps. I'm at step 7, thank God. And so I have children. I've funded their college, and they're married. They're doing well. And I know today's situation is, I see it with my own children. They have financial obligations, or it seems like more financial strain than they did when I was younger. And I guess, how do I relate to them, or relate to other people, especially younger people, that, this is a path forward that works. It worked in my life, and give them that hope.
So Scott, first I got to ask, right? Because again, your words, old man, how old are you?
I'm 56.
Scott, 50. Mark Calloway, The Undertaker, was still wrestling professional wrestling matches at 56. You're not old, man. If he can take a steel chair to the head at 56, you're all right. But here's the challenge. Scott, at what age will everyone suddenly listen to you?
I'm not sure.
Well, my guess is you haven't hit it yet. And
No.
spoiler alert, you're probably not going to. So what I'm hearing here, Scott, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's a passion point for this next generation, right? There's a passion to do some preventative medicine rather than wait around and try to find a cure later. Did I get that accurately?
Yeah.
So you mentioned your own kids, married, grown, doing well. What'd you do with your own kids to help them figure this out?
Well, one thing I did was actually gave them bought their, I guess their books and things for the Dave Ramsey class to go through the baby steps. I thought it was very impactful in my life, so I showed them. Also, I showed it through my life on how I've handled finances. You know, when they grew up, they always call me, you know, tight on money all the time, but you know, I was able to show them, you know, how to. One of the proudest moments was like showing my daughter how to negotiate. She was getting a prom dress when she was 17, and I told her how to negotiate that, and she did that and was able to get the price she wanted for that prom dress from somebody else. So, you know, I kind of instilled that in their lives as they grew up.
Yeah. Now, Scott, there's a lot of parents who have handed their kids books and resources, and the kids use those books to start a fire and toast some marshmallows, right?
True.
Metaphorically, or in some cases, not so metaphorically speaking. What existed in the relationship between you and your children that when you handed them these books, they said, okay, this is something worth reading and paying attention to? So when you enrolled them in a Financial Peace University class, that they decided this is something worth listening and paying attention to? What bridged that gap in your mind?
Just my example and my wife's example in our lives and how we handled money.
Would it be safe to say and fair to say that you created a world of trust between
Yes.
you and your kids?
Yes.
Because y'all, no one's going to listen to someone and take their advice if they don't trust them. And so, Scott, as you're thinking about how do I get to this next generation, the same principle applies, right? How can you build trust with this younger generation? How can you earn the space in their world to speak with some authority and empathy and connection?
Yeah, I think trust is definitely you have to trust the person you're being coached by, that's for sure.
Let me even make this more difficult for just a second. Scott, how did you learn to trust yourself?
I've seen the results of my finances. You know, we were paycheck to paycheck. I remember earlier in my daughter was 9, and we were living paycheck to paycheck just like everybody else. And I was in my church, took the Financial Peace University, and from that learned those 7 steps, and you know, applied them to my life, and not perfectly. I don't think anybody does it perfectly, but we finally got to the point where we were seeing the results of paying off debt and getting that completed and seeing that freedom.
Scott, what do you think would happen if you took that story you just shared with 300 of your friends here and shared that in your community?
I think probably a lot of people, it would inspire them to be at a point where they don't have debt. I mean, it's
Would it build some trust?
Oh yeah, it would.
What do you need to reach the next generation?
Trust and experience. I would think my own experiences.
So the way that you do this, right? It's not becoming the famous meme of Steve Buscemi wearing the backward hat, carrying a skateboard with a t-shirt that says music band, walk around a high school saying, "How do you do, fellow kids?" Right? Like that's not what you need to do. Right? Scott, please, please, please don't recreate that in your coaching practice. If you don't know what I'm talking about, y'all, you can go look that up later. It's
See,
hilarious.
that's why I said old man, because I don't know what you're talking about.
Right? And share the story that's powerful. Let me tell you something about some of the younger generations. Right? I'm a millennial. I work with a lot of Gen Zers and such all the time. The younger generations put a ton of what's the word, weight behind and thought behind authenticity and
Mhm.
story. If you tell a story that is authentic and real, you have their attention. The younger generations don't care about well-polished scripts.
Right.
It is raw, it is real, it is run around with the phones open all the time, catching anything you can as candid video shot kind of thing. That's what TikTok and Instagram and Snapchat and all these different things really run through. And so if you can show up and be a voice of authenticity and connection in sharing your story, you earn the right to ask some questions. You earn the right to share some different perspectives. You earn the right to challenge the narratives in their heads, and
Mhm.
you earn the right to see transformation up close and personal. Fair enough?
Yeah, fair enough. I think that would work across multi-generations. I mean, I can
Yeah,
see that in myself. Yeah.
absolutely. Because, by the way, one other thing I'll share, y'all, there is no perfect age to start coaching. I saw someone, this was Maria saying, "I'm with Scott, but I'm only 27 years old." Right? My passion is younger girls and women, stay-at-home wives, etc. So, like, Scott, you're old enough to be her dad, and she's asking the same questions as you.
Mhm.
But that's an awesome thing. Right? We're all experiencing this. And you know, I will tell you, I have seen people as young as 16, 17, 18 years old come through this training and make a difference in their community.
Hmm.
I had someone earlier this year, she jumped on the first of those 7 development calls with me. And I asked her what got her started. And she's like, "I'm so excited." She said, "I started my own CPA practice 38 years ago at the age of 40. And
Hmm.
now I'm taking this training because I'm looking for something to do when I retire." Future tense. Now,
Yeah.
I don't love math, but I can do math. If you start something at 40 and you do it for 38 years, that would make you 78 years old. And now you're looking for something to do in the future when you let that thing go. Scott, you are not too old. You are in an amazing spot to share an authentic story and have real connection with real people that leads to powerful results.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate
Thank
that.
you, Scott. And again, Scott, thanks for jumping in and letting us go there. Because again, you were not unique in that particular challenge. We hear the same question from younger to older and everywhere in between. The ultimate question is, why would someone listen to me? And
Yeah.
the reality is, people will listen to you not because of a fancy or flashy degree or designation or certificate or any of those things. The number one reason that people will listen to you is the example of a transformed life. When you are actually living this stuff out, even if you haven't arrived yet, if you are on this path, living this stuff out, people will notice it and see it and they want it. They want to be a part of it. So if you will live authentically in front of people, you earn the right to be their coach. You earn the right. And will everyone listen to you? No. This will also allow you to coach people that are further along than you. I've coached people that made more than $1 million a year several times over. I've had more than one of those types of clients. I have not had a year yet where I've made more than $1 million in a year. Maybe someday, knock on wood, right? But if I can help them become better than they were yesterday, if I can challenge my client to be 1% better today than yesterday, we're moving in the right direction. That's what we're looking to do as a coach. So, Josh, I know we're going to talk to some more people here. And I also know lunch breaks come to an end very, very quickly. Some of these
Yes.
people are hiding in their cars, avoiding running back into their desk before they have to log back in. So let's talk about the deal. For those that honored
Sure.
us with their time today, let's talk about that. And then we'll take a couple more questions before we log off.
All right, it's gonna take a team to pull this off. So Johnny, if you'd be so kind, go ahead. He's already done it. He's beat me to it. Thank you, Johnny. So Johnny's just gone ahead and put in the chat for those who cannot see this. I'm gonna go ahead and read it. But to enroll in the Financial Coach Master Training today, we've made 20 spots available, and we have those spots open or until they're filled or until it expires on the 12th of November, which is next Tuesday at 11:59 p.m. And here's what it is. The investment for the Financial Coach Master Training is $2,295. But since you joined us today, we are going to take $600 off. So your price at checkout is $1,695 by entering the promotion code intentional. So intentional, INTENTIONAL. There you go, intentional. Spelling bee. There we go. I got a round of applause there.
Right, you said it, spell it, say it again.
So at checkout, some of you who are having a hard time, that link Johnny's put in the chat, but you can just simply go to RamseySolutions.com in your cart, add the Financial Coach Master Training. And again, at checkout, go ahead and put intentional in there and it'll bring your price down to $1,695. We do have 20 spots made available. That will include everything that we've discussed today, the online content, the coaching library, the 7 development calls with our senior coaches and your peers as you're going through the training. You'll have 1 full year to go through the training. And here's the other element that was added as well. This is all going to be backed, since you're buying during a promotional period right now, by our 100% profit guarantee. So what we mean by that, if you go in and you activate your training in the next 90 days, and then in the first 6 months, if you've gone ahead and you've put the training into practice, you're working it, and then the next 6 months, so after 1 full year of being in the training, you've actually been doing it, and then you're out there actively doing it for 1 full year of being in the training. If you're not seeing your initial investment, we will refund you the price that you paid today, the $1,695, and $100 as well on top of that for your time and energy that was invested. So we'll fully refund that to you. Again, backed by our 100% profit guarantee for those 20 spots who purchased today. So there you are. That's the special we have going on. Someone's asking again. Yes, it's $1,695, so $1,695, 20 spots, and the code is intentional. So you'll put that at checkout or just go in the link. Some have asked about, is there a spouse or a friend's discount? We do have discounts. We truly believe that going through this, you are better together. So Johnny, if you'd be so kind, simply put my email there in the chat. So it's Joshua. Johnny, you've already done it. I'm looking up. See, Johnny's ahead of. He's already done this. So joshua.collier@ramseySolutions.com. Simply put spousal or friend in the subject line. Johnny, thank you. You're on top of it. And speaking of being on top of it, Johnny, I know you have another guest queued up here. Who is our next friend that we're going to be welcoming now?
Awesome. Again, just to let you know, there is hand therapy out there. I was just quickly Googling. So there's a bunch of legitimate practices just for those of you. Yeah. Anyway, seriously though, Sarah Fields had an awesome question. So Sarah, we're going to unmute you. I'll set it up here.
She's no longer on the webinar with us.
Oh, that's it. Then we're going to go next in line. Paige Humble. Where's Paige Humble at?
All right. We do have Paige here.
Okay, Paige is still here. So what's really cool is Sarah's question was kind of like Paige's, so we're going to go right into it. So Paige's question is a little bit geared towards what's the hardest part about finding clients, and what are the best strategies you've seen, Tim, to obtain clients. So I'll let you kind of take it away, Paige. What's on your heart in terms of those questions, and then you two can have a conversation. Go for it, Paige. Welcome.
Paige, says you're unmuted. Are you able to jump in here? Oh, the joy of the live webinar and technology. Awesome.
If for some reason it doesn't work, Tim, maybe you could just take the question head on quickly and talk a little bit about it while I try to see who's on deck.
Yeah, so let's talk this through for a moment. Here's one of the things that we found really, really helpful for all of us that are walking through this challenge of how in the world do I find people to coach, or what are the strategies to creating clients? And really the thing I've learned is there's 3 really important questions that we all need to ask ourselves and walk through. And so everyone who's currently here within the sound of my voice, jot these 3 questions down, spend some time on answering these 3 questions, and this will be absolutely helpful in helping you determine where to find clients. How do I go about doing this? What does that process look like? This is a strategy I've used for years. This is the strategy I've used, and it's the reason I still currently have a waiting list of people who are trying to get in for coaching with me. So the first thing I want to find out is, who do you most want to serve? Who do you most want to serve? We've got to think about that. Who is it that I want to serve? Because sometimes we get this idea of, I want to serve anyone and everyone all the time. That's more than 8 billion people on the planet, representing a whole lot of different scenarios and situations. And that's too broad for anyone. But I also don't want to be like, okay, I want to serve like 40-year-old dudes living in the greater Nashville area named Tim who wear blue blocker glasses but don't actually have prescription glasses, right? Like too specific, too niche. It's not going to allow you to build up the practice that you want to have. But thinking about who is it that you want to serve. And if you're struggling with this question, here's a great way to get at that question in your mind is where do I see the greatest pain? Or what's the greatest pain that I've experienced? One of the things that we've discovered is that for most people, our greatest purpose is directly related to our greatest pain. And so if I can think about what did I experience and where do I find people who are experiencing something similar? So some of you are saying, I want to connect with single parents, or I want to connect with stay-at-home parents. Some of you, it's I want to connect with small business owners. For some of you, it's I want to serve pastors because pastors have no one they can talk to about their challenges. For some of you, I've seen several people who, like me, came at this from the mental health counseling side of things, and you're looking and saying, I want to help people in that space, or I want to maybe even serve counselors to help take stress off of counselors so that they can serve their clients well. But figure out who is it that you most want to serve, just question number one. Question number two, where do those people get together? So once I've figured out who I want to serve, now I can think about, well, where are those people getting together? If I want to connect with pastors, I probably should go talk to some people in some churches. If I want to talk to single parents, I probably want to pick some of like the holidays that are holidays for school, but not holidays for the rest of us. And I want to go hit the local Chick-fil-A, and I want to go to the play area at the mall, and I want to go to the places that these people hang out and look for opportunities to talk to them. I'm looking for the person who is in that spot. But where do these people get together? Right, if my goal is to work with the youth of America, I'm probably not going to go hang out at a lot of knitting clubs. Nothing wrong with the knitting club, but it's not usually where the youth of America hang out. And then once I've figured out where are these people, I want to think about what connections to that world do I already have. So for example, mentioning I came from the counseling background, I went to grad school with a bunch of other people who wanted to be a counselor. And guess how many times I see people on social media, my former grad school classmates, complaining about their student loans and the program that's supposed to forgive them and then it doesn't, it's supposed to forgive them and then it doesn't. And they're riding the student loan roller coaster of emotion. And they're telling me these things. And what if I just step in and say, what if I can help you get off that roller coaster without getting hurt? What if there was an emergency stop button and you don't have to keep going up and down and through the loop to loop and trying to not lose your lunch on this thing called your student loan disaster? But who do I want to serve? Where do those people get together? And then what connections to that world do I already have? And most of you have more connections to that world than you realize. And I want to be even extra clear here. By connections to that world, I will tell you your family and your friends are wonderful advocates and horrible clients. Do yourself a favor. Don't coach family and friends. How's that, Josh?
Tim, well, thank you. And Johnny, are we going to try? Well, two things. Thing one, Tim, Johnny, Dave, we are at time. And I know we said 1 hour, and I'd like to keep us right on schedule here. Do we want to call it here? Or I know Paige was working on our microphone. Are we going to try to loop Paige in one more time? Johnny, what's the call, my friend?
Yeah, it looks like I have a few moments, so thank you for asking. I really appreciate that. Tim, you good to go? A couple extra minutes, Dave?
I can go a couple extra minutes. Let's try to get in with Paige. Paige, are you there?
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me?
Hey, there we go.
Yay!
Yay,
See,
good.
technology has humbled all of us, not just you, Paige. Literally.
Okay,
You don't
well,
have to take that from him.
I am not a technology person anyways, so
Oh.
I leave all that to my husband.
Awesome.
All right. Well, hopefully what Tim said there was a precursor and a little bit helpful backdrop. But Paige, tell us about some of your concerns here today and how we can help.
Well, I'm just more of like an introvert person, so like putting myself out there is a bit more difficult for me. And then like I don't really like social media, and it feels a little bit awkward for me to start like promoting myself on social media or whatever it was. It would just feel awkward for me because I don't want to like get too much in people's business, but I know that's part of the financial thing. But reaching out, oh, it just seems a little bit awkward for me.
Sure. So there's a couple things I want to walk us through here, if that's okay with you, Paige.
Yeah.
First off, what are the greatest strengths of an introvert?
We tend to be really great listeners and have a lot of empathy for people.
What else?
Not quite sure. Sorry, my 3-month-old is starting to wake up, so
I love
I
it.
don't know how much longer I can be.
No, I've got a 21-month-old at home, so I'm only a little bit further down that path. And those are some of the best sounds in the world. They never get old. Um, so the first part of it, right? You have the ability to be an excellent listener, and introverts are usually pretty good at making a safe spot for others to share what's on their heart and mind. Right? And the reason I bring this up is it's very, very easy to focus on the things we don't have instead of the things we do. And so you may not be the person who's going to go to a social gathering and try to make sure you shake every single person's hand, leaving a business card behind with every single person you meet. You're like that. You probably just had a heartbeat skip just from even mentioning that kind of an idea, right? You don't have to do that. How do you build relationships that create conversation? And so here's another part of the consideration. You mentioned, I don't necessarily want to get into someone's business. Paige, if you were to be on a boat and you saw someone drowning and you had the fancy little life preserver on a rope hanging there and you have the strong desire to throw it at them, are you getting in their business?
I mean, yes, but yeah. Like for that instance, yes, but like going up to someone saying, "Hey, can I talk to you about your finances?" That's
Okay.
like I kind of want them to approach me, but I also got to let them know, "Hey, this is what I'm doing." But yeah, I would definitely give them the lifesaver thing.
Because there's a moral obligation for us to do that, right? When you see someone drowning, when you see someone about to get hit by a truck, we have to intervene. That's the real and reasonable thing to do. And I agree, walking up to someone who I see about to get hit by a Mack truck and say, "Hey, do you have a moment to talk about your finances?" Right? I might as well knock on someone's door and say, "Would you like to talk about my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ?" It can work, but it feels awkward for everyone involved, right? Like again, I've done door-to-door evangelism. I've been there, and it's not my favorite style to go
Same.
about it. But what if instead we look for opportunities for a different path into that? So, how often do you hear people talk about a challenge they have where if their financial situation was different, it might not be the same challenge?
Pretty often, I guess I do. Yeah.
Right. You got a 3-month-old at home. How many other moms do you know that have a 3-month-old at home that are trying to budget differently because their financial situation suddenly looks a lot different?
Probably quite a few. There were 3 other women in my church that just had babies just right after me. So
Yeah. How many of those women are trying to figure out how to afford diapers and or formula? And maybe they're trying both the cloth and the disposable, trying to figure out which one's actually more economical. But also there's an emotional side of like, gosh, I understand the value of some of these cloth diapers, but I also hate them and cleaning them is the worst. Right. And so like it's not about walking up to these people and saying, "Hey, do you have a moment to talk about your finances?" It's let me look for the pain points that finance touches and start with talking to them about what's going on in their world and earn the right to move it into the conversation about their money. Right? So if I'm having a conversation with you, newer parent to new parent, and talking about, "Hey, here's some of the things I've learned along the way that have made this parenting journey a little easier," might I earn the right to talk with you about some other things in that process as well?
yeah, I could probably do that. You got to build the trust first, like you guys were talking about earlier.
Yeah. And so I want to be very, very clear. Your 3-month-old is not a sales tool, right? So please don't hear me say that. And the relationships you build as a result of being who you are and in the life position that you're in are a powerful way to earn the right to be someone's coach. And by the way, it doesn't mean that these 3 ladies at your church that had babies right after you are your first 3 clients. In fact, the 3 that may never be a client of yours, but you may spend time in community with them, sharing your passion to help people with personal finance. And they can say, "You know what? My husband's got someone at work that needs to talk to you. My next door neighbor could really use your help. My sister 3 states over is about to be in a financial mess. Can you sit down with her and walk her through this?" This is how those friends become your advocates, not necessarily your clients. But building that relationship is how you build the opportunity to coach others. that all make sense, Paige?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for jumping in here. And what's your little one's name, by the way?
Eli.
Eli. It's a great name. Love it. Thanks for sharing with us. And oh man, yeah, just the sound. When you're used to the sound of like the rhythmic padding of a baby's back, like whoo, whoo. Okay, Josh, take it away for a second, so I don't start crying.
No, Tim, I think there's been a theme today. I just want to circle back around and say, what's the theme that has surfaced? Really getting to the objections of saying, hey, listen, it's my personality or it's my age. With both of those, we're still not getting down to the root. And that's one thing I appreciate about how you coach and what you've modeled for us today to say, hold on, what have you experienced in your own life? What's your story? Or maybe for someone else, like for me, part of my story was being the oldest of four boys, watching my parents struggle and then go through, and then after 40 years of marriage, go through a nasty divorce where finances was a big part of that. And then seeing my three younger brothers struggle with their finances. That's why I became passionate. That's why I went to the financial coach master training initially, because I was like, no, it ends with me. I don't want anybody else in my family to go through. I was a little more on the exception rather than the rule where, Tim, I went headlong after my brothers because I didn't want them to go. And so I did coach my brothers. And was it messy? Yes. Was it advisable? No. So you're right there. But I'm just saying that was my why, because I was like, I'm done. It stops with my family where this generational thing continues. So for you all today, maybe you are one who's experienced something similar to Dave Ramsey, where he went through and had bankruptcy and all that. But maybe just simply you were tired of seeing your friends and family and neighbors go through, and you're like, no, it stops. Something's got to change, and I want to be equipped as a first responder. So, Johnny, do we have one more caller? I know, Tim, we have a hard stop coming up. Can we fit one more in here?
I think so.
Okay.
Awesome.
Johnny, we good to go on that one?
Yep, I've scheduled my hand therapy appointment for next week, so we're good to go. So no, one more seriously though is Hannah Bailey. She has a really awesome sort of last minute 11th hour question here that's really relevant, and I know it's on other people's minds. So, Hannah, you're in Baby Step 2. Shout out to Baby Step 2ers like me. It's awesome. You're grinding, you're working, but you're still helping make an impact from right where you are. So, tell us, your question is geared towards where does this fit into saving for this? Where does saving fit into, your Baby Step 2, and should you do it now in terms of enrolling or wait later? So, Tim, take it away with Hannah and her question about when's this the right timing?
Yeah. Hannah, what part of your question did Johnny leave out?
I think he hit the nail on the head. So thank you so much, Johnny, and thank you, Tim, and thank you everyone for joining today, because I think we're really covering a lot of our concerns and anxieties about moving into something like this potentially. Yeah. And I am a nurse, and I do love that. And part of my current job is coaching and education, which I really enjoy, and I really love people. But I'm $30,000 of the way through my $74,000 consumer debt, and so I am a little anxious about potentially putting that on pause, maybe to do something like this when I do have a great career. But this is sort of an area that I want to expand into, and I find myself being called to it. And I know that sounds silly, but I really need to.
Pause.
Mm-hmm.
What about that sounds silly?
I guess just because, I do have a great career, but I really feel like there's something with this and the steps and what I've finally found that I'm good at, where I can really help many more people in another way. And I think that that's awesome. Important.
And what part of that is silly?
I guess nothing. I guess I'd never put it into words, and you challenging me on that really helped. So thank you.
Awesome. Right. So there's tremendous value in living in your purpose. And so Hannah, I'm going to do something to answer your question that I don't normally do in coaching or on webinars like this. Is that okay?
Please.
I'm going to answer your question directly from my own story. Right. So much of the time, my goal in coaching is to challenge those things and look at those things in other people. But kind of like what we talked about with Scott earlier, there can be value in looking at someone else's story. Now, also, I just got to clarify one thing before I do that. Hannah, are you making these decisions solo, or do you have someone that you're roping in on these discussions?
Solo.
Okay. So that The benefit of that is you don't have to pass this through somebody else. The difficulty of that is you don't have someone else to give you feedback on this. Right.
Right.
So I'm going to take a moment and be a sounding board in a way and share with you the decision-making process that I had to walk through. Is that all right?
Yes.
Because Hannah, about a decade ago, I was where you are. I had degrees, had a really, really wonderful opportunity of a career, was moving up in the counseling practice I was a part of, working as a mental health counselor, doing something that I found tremendous value in addition to several side jobs, because my wife and I had a crap ton of debt. We had 6 figures in debt, most of which was student loans. And so you break that down individually. And again, like the numbers are eerily similar. The situation is eerily similar. And so the reason I bring this up is what we had to look at is, if I pause our debt snowball to do this, what am I able and willing to do to speed it back up when I finish? And so the thought process I had to walk through was, what am I willing to do to take this investment into this training and turn it into this kind of a return on the investment to get us out of debt and towards our goals that much faster? Because if I can do that, it's worthwhile. If I can't do that, then I don't need to do this yet. And so, because I also had the challenge slash opportunity, depending on how you all want to look at it, of being married at the time, I went to my wife and I said, here's what I want to do. What am I missing? Here's what I'm willing to do. Here's what I'm able to do. This is my plan, because we're going to take some significant pause here on our debt snowball to take this money to apply this. This is back in the day. We had to travel to Nashville. It cost me about $5,000 to take the training back in the day, doing the actual fees and travel and lodging and all that stuff to come to Nashville and do this. And so it was not a quick and easy decision, right? That's not a decision I made like that. We walked it through, we talked it through, we put together a plan, and I said, all right, here's what I'm willing to do. She says, okay, let's do it. And then put some good accountability around it. Came through the training, went back and said, all right, I've just invested this amount of time. I've just slowed down our debt snowball this much. Now this is my motivation to jump back in and do the things that I learned, to do the things that I know I need to do, to put the work in to generate the results that I want. And they cut more than a year off of our debt snowball when we did that. So if you're going to do this and you're going to speed up the time that you spend in the debt snowball, then it's okay to say, all right, let me pause the debt snowball for a little bit, make my minimum payments, set aside the extra out of my budget, put the money aside for this, go. If you're looking at this and you're saying, I'm not willing to do what it's necessary to win, and this is actually going to then slow me down, then it's not the right time. If that's the case, if this is going to keep you in debt longer, then hold off, pay off the debt first. We'll be here. We've been training and developing coaches for a quarter of a century. We're not stopping now. Right, I mentioned it a few minutes ago as a joke, but it's true. I'm 40 years old. It's not like I'm planning to retire at 41. I'm going to be here for a while doing this. And so if that timing isn't right, figure out when it is right. But realistically speaking, I believe if you're willing to put in the work and the effort, that this will speed up your path out of baby step 2. And I believe that because I did it. Does that make sense, Hannah?
It does. Yes.
Awesome. So what are you willing to do to make this happen?
Well, we do have some overtime shifts that I believe are becoming available in my department, some vacancies, right? So have come up toward the end of the year. So I think I might be able to snag 1 or 2 more of those shifts. And to be honest, that's not going to slow me down that much. I was just kind of concerned because I've heard, Dave and some of the other personalities say like, oh gosh, is this really an emergency? Like depending on the situation. I'm like, well, technically it's not an emergency, but it's something I kind of want to do, and I kind of want to do it now. So
it's not an emergency, so don't raise your emergency fund.
Right.
And it is an investment in getting yourself out of debt faster.
Right. Okay.
So what we would say is, if you can do this to get yourself out of debt faster, it's a good idea. If it's going to keep you in debt longer, it's a bad idea. That's kind of that break-even point along the way. And by the way, you bring up something really, really interesting for all of us. If the moment isn't right now, understand for yourself, do the work and figure out, what will I need to know to make it the right moment? What needs to be true that isn't true today for it to be the right moment? Because if you're like Hannah and you are called to do this, The encouragement is do this as soon as you can. So for some of you, you're like, I can do it today. Let's do it today. Awesome. You have a sweet deal going on. Some of you are like, I can do it, but I can do it in 2 weeks. Or this is going to be my Christmas gift to myself. Can you give me a call next month? Yes, talk to Kelvin or Johnny or Dave or Brad or Josh on our team and figure out what that goal looks like to get in when that time is right. And for some of you, you're like, you know what? I'm really glad I spent 75 minutes because this last 75 minutes told me I need to go be anywhere else doing anything else other than this. Right. And if that's where you fall, that's okay. That's still a good use of the time because now you know where you're headed. But the important thing, like Hannah, figure out, is this your calling? If it is, how do you live in your calling? How do you step into what you've been purposed and created to do? Because there is nothing better that you can do with your life than to live in purpose and on purpose. And I truly believe that. I've learned that. I've seen it. I've experienced it. And so if this is your time, let's go. Can't wait to see you in here. If we didn't get to your questions today, or you're thinking, I would love to get there, but I've got some other questions. I'm seeing some of you like, I was hoping to get some more answers, didn't get it. Cool. Again, we had 300 plus people on today's webinar. That's a lot of people to talk to. And so you will have a chance to talk to Dave and Johnny and Brad and Kelvin and Josh from our team. They'll reach out to you. So if you have additional questions, take advantage of that. Watch for that call coming from a 615 area code. Answer the call, right? Political season's over. We're not going to spam you with who to vote for, who not to vote for. Actually answer the call, get the questions that you need answered, and we cannot wait to have those conversations and help you figure out if this is your right next step. And if it is, let's go. And if it's not, find what your next right step is and do it. All right, I got to run to my next coaching call here. Thank you all. Josh, Johnny, Dave, thanks for your time today. I'll let you all finish it out here. This has been a blast.
See you, my friend. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Tim. All right, Johnny and Dave, we're going to be hopping on the phones here just as this comes to a close. Johnny, was there any last minute housekeeping that we need to go ahead and address at this point?
No, I just want to say thank you to everybody out there. Seriously, this chat was on fire today. You guys are awesome, and everything that Tim said there is true. If this is your time, let's go. We'll take you on. If it's not, figure out the plan to get there. That's what we're going to be calling to do. Me, Dave, Kelvin, and Brad. Once again, if you want a multiple enrollment deal at either today or at some point in the future, reach out to Josh. We'll get you squared away on a slightly better deal for more enrollments at once. Other than that, go out there. We're proud of all you guys, and don't feel like if you didn't get your question today that you were left out. There's more to be desired there when we call you, and you can also reach out to us, okay? So we're proud of you guys. Thanks so much. Hope you stay safe out there. The election's over, and now there's a lot of work to do, right? So get out there and help make change because people need it now more than ever, all right? So thank you, Josh.
All right. Thanks, you guys. All right. I'm going to go ahead and close shop now. Thank you, my friends. And again,